This story is based on real-life story of Reverend Michael Scott, an English pastor who took on American segregation head-on. This isn't a story from a movie. It's the incredible true story of Reverend Michael Scott. Get ready, because what he did will blow your mind. Our story begins not in the American South, but in the heart of London. Michael Scott was a man of deep faith, an Anglican priest whose conscience was stirred by injustice wherever he saw it. He wasn't your typical quiet clergyman. He was a firebrand, a passionate advocate for human rights who had already made a name for himself fighting against apartheid in South Africa. He believed that all people were created equal in the eyes of God, and he was willing to put his life on the line for that belief. So, what brought this English pastor across the Atlantic to the divided United States of the 1950s? The call came from the American Civil Rights Movement. Leaders in the movement knew they needed international allies. They needed voices that could shine a global spotlight on the brutal reality of Jim Crow segregation. And who better than a man who had already stood up to a similar system in South Africa? When Michael Scott arrived in America, he didn't just preach from a comfortable pulpit. He went straight to the front lines. He traveled to the Deep South, a place where racial tensions were at a boiling point. Imagine this. A man with a distinct English accent, dressed in his clerical collar, walking into towns where segregation was the law of the land, enforced with violence and intimidation. He wasn't just an observer. He was a participant. He met with local civil rights leaders, with sharecroppers who had been kicked off their land for trying to vote, and with families living in constant fear. He listened to their stories, stories of injustice, of humiliation, and of incredible courage. He saw with his own eyes the separate and deeply unequal facilities, the whites-only signs, the dilapidated schools for black children, the everyday indignities that were a part of life under Jim Crow. One of the most powerful things Scott did was to use his platform as a clergyman and an international figure to document what he saw. He wrote articles, gave interviews to British and American newspapers, and spoke on the radio. He described the systemic oppression in vivid detail, refusing to soften the harsh reality. He told the world that what was happening in America was not just a domestic issue. It was a moral crisis that concerned all of humanity. He compared the segregation in America directly to the apartheid system he had fought in South Africa. This was a powerful and controversial comparison at the time. Many Americans did want to hear that their country's policies resembled those of a regime that was becoming increasingly condemned on the world stage. But Scott was relentless. He argued that racial segregation, no matter where it was practiced, was a sin against God and a violation of fundamental human rights. His presence was a direct challenge to the authorities. Here was an outsider, a respected religious figure from a key ally nation, exposing the ugly truth that many wanted to hide. He wasn't easily intimidated, faced threats, hostility, and suspicion. Local police watched him. But his faith and his conviction gave him a different kind of strength. He believed he was doing God's work. Scott also worked to build bridges between the anti-apartheid movement and the American Civil Rights Movement. He saw them as two fronts in the same global struggle for racial justice. He helped organize support, raise funds, and foster a sense of international solidarity. He understood that these movements could learn from each other and strengthen each other. One of his most significant acts was testifying about what he witnessed. He didn't just speak to the press. He provided formal testimony to international bodies, including the United Nations. He used his credibility to give a voice to the voiceless on a global stage. He made it impossible for the world to ignore what was happening in the land of the free. He was essentially putting America on trial in the court of world opinion. Think about the sheer bravery of it all. At a time when many black Americans were being arrested, beaten, or even killed for demanding their basic rights. Here was a white English pastor standing right beside them. He used his privilege to status as a white man, a foreigner, and a clergyman not for his own comfort, but as a shield and a megaphone for the oppressed. His actions had a real impact. Rich reports in the British press helped shape public opinion in Europe. Putting pressure on the U.S. government, his work with the United Nations helped internationalize the struggle, framing it as a human rights issue. He inspired people, both in America and abroad, to get involved and to speak out. He showed that the fight for justice knows no borders. The story of Reverend Michael Scott is a powerful reminder that one person's conscience can indeed change the world. He wasn't a politician or a general. He was a pastor who took his faith seriously. He believed in a God of justice and liberation, and he lived out that belief with extraordinary courage. He saw an injustice and refused to look away, even when it was thousands of miles from his home. His journey from a London parish to the heart of the segregated American South is a testament to the power of moral conviction. It challenges all of us to ask ourselves, what injustices do we see in the world today? What are we willing to do about them? The legacy of Michael Scott isn't just a historical footnote. It's a living inspiration. It shows us that true faith is not about quiet contemplation. It's about active engagement with the world's problems. It's about standing with the marginalized, speaking truth to power, and never giving up on the promise of a more just and equal world. A single English pastor who confronted an entire system of oppression and helped bend the arc of history a little closer to justice. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as incredible as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more hidden histories that deserve to be told. We'll see you next time.